Alright, you guys, this is video E4.p1-5 on your watershed notes. And we are looking at this sucker here. You should have this out. We're going to zip through these notes pretty quick. You will be doing some coloring. Okay, so you're going to need a variety of colored pencils. Let's say, even looking down here at this diagram here for drainage basins of the U.S. How about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Let's see, maybe 14 or 15. As long as they're not touching, you could do it with far less colors. But go ahead and grab some colored pencils. So pause this if you need to. Otherwise, I am going to go ahead and get started. All right, notes on the watersheds. So our leading questions. How is Earth's fresh water distributed? Okay, we know that rivers, or if you didn't know it, rivers drain the surface. That's what rivers do. Okay, but we also then want to know what a regional watershed is. So we're going to start big and then kind of bring it down to right here where we live in Hamilton. So first off, runoff. After it rains, water flows downhill with gravity, and that water is called runoff. This would be if it did not infiltrate or go into the ground. So if it's flowing over the surface, it is called runoff. Divides and drainage basins. Two things affect the way water flows on land: a divide and a drainage basin. There are some different things. A divide, a ridge or continuous line of high land from which water flows in different directions. Okay, so say the top of a mountain. On one side, it's obviously going to flow down that side of the mountain. On the other side, it's going to flow down that side of the mountain. And actually, before we move on from divides, our continental divides. Does anyone know where that would be? If we have to think of a large mountain, where might that occur so that one side will drain to the Pacific and one side will drain to the Atlantic? Okay, if you think about that, has to be in the Rockies. Okay, in the Rocky Mountains, if you've ever been through there, maybe you've passed a sign or something that said the Continental Divide, where if it falls to the west, it's going to the Pacific, and if it falls to the east, it's ultimately going to end up, say, in the Mississippi and then down into the Gulf of Mexico, which is Atlantic Ocean. And we have the Appalachian or Smoky Mountains in the eastern part of the United States, but either way, that's going to the Atlantic. So drainage basins. They transport water from high ground to an ocean or a lake. Okay, around here, it will go to the Great Lakes, ultimately because we're nowhere near an ocean. It may over time make its way to an ocean. Each stream drains a specific area of Earth's surface. So if we take all the streams, say, in the United States, all together, they're draining every square inch of land, ultimately. Okay? Each stream drains a very specific area of Earth, which is the reason why that stream is there. So that area is called the stream's drainage basin. All right? Each tiny little stream even has its own drainage basin because it's draining a certain area of Earth. But then probably that stream connects up to a larger one, like the Rabbit River connects to the Kalamazoo River. So the Rabbit River's drainage basin is actually part of Kalamazoo River's drainage basin, and so on and so on. It just depends on how large scale you want to talk or how minute, how specific do you want to talk about drainage basins. So for the drainage basins of the United States, we have a whole bunch of these. So I would like you to go ahead and start coloring them. Do your best. I know on your map it's black and white. It's kind of hard to see where the lines are. Just look at this sucker that I have up right now and try to do your best. Obviously, you probably don't even have to color these. You should understand that Alaska, which is nowhere near Hawaii, they are separate drainage basins. But all these black lines in here are relatively major rivers. They're pretty major rivers. Okay, so do your best to color those in. Pause it if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So watershed. Watershed is the same thing as drainage basin. You'll see it labeled both ways. We're probably going to refer to it as a watershed from here on out. Our watershed is known as the Great Lakes watershed in this region of the United States. We can get more and more specific as we start talking about things closer to home here in Hamilton. So if you're looking at this guy, you need 6 colors because this is all the water that drains into the Great Lakes. And we are here south of Muskegon on Lake Michigan. And so we are this bluish color draining into Lake Michigan. So take a moment to color those in, but I'm going to move on. So the interesting thing about our watershed is that 10% of the population of the U.S. and a quarter of Canada's population resides within the boundaries of the Great Lakes watershed. So that's quite a few people. Now Canada's huge, but most people certainly live in the southern portions near the Great Lakes. %40 of the world's fresh water that is not locked up in glaciers, so fresh surface water, resides in 2 watersheds. One is the Great Lakes, that's 20%, and Lake Baikal, one lake by itself in Russia, has 20% of the world's fresh surface water. Lake Baikal is a rift, a divide, and it's only getting bigger over geologic time, but it's very, very, very deep and very long. It's not a very wide lake, but it's very long and very deep. And so it also holds 20% of the world's fresh water by itself, where all 5 Great Lakes combine to hold another 20%. And we can see Lake Baikal here in Russia. By comparison, as you look at all this other stuff, it is huge. Okay, in comparison. I mean, you have the Caspian Sea over here, the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, and Lake Baikal would be a significant portion of them. It is very long. There's a huge distance that it covers. Deepest lake in the world, as I said, it is a rift, 5,370 feet. Okay, so mile deep, we'll say. So, depending on where you live, you're either in the Macatawa or Kalamazoo watershed. If you were in the Macatawa watershed, you would probably live within Holland city limits. So most of us then on this scale, after we come down from the Great Lakes watershed to the Lake Michigan watershed, we are either in the Macatawa or the Kalamazoo River watershed. So most of us here, if we live in Hamilton, we're going to be in the Kalamazoo watershed. And this sucker here, I know they're all shades of green. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to have to divide this on up. Do not forget this little sliver up here that goes with the Lake Huron watershed. And this piece up here, this is part of Lake Michigan. But we are right in here. Hamilton would be like right here. Right in here. Whoop, if you can see my cursor. This is the Kalamazoo River watershed through here, and the Macatawa watershed is relatively small. So go ahead and finish up that coloring. And you're done with these notes. We're actually going to then, in a little bit here, take a closer look, a much closer look at the Kalamazoo and Red River watershed themselves.